It's time to huddle up. I'm Garrett Seawright. This is the Daily Huddle for Monday, September 4th. Happy Labor Day. Thanks for making us a part of your day. However it is, wherever it is you're doing so, we certainly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up. It helps get in front of more college football fans that way, and that's always a good thing. If you're listening on the podcast, give us a 5-star review, and we'll read them here on the show, no matter how great or bad they are. We'll skip the expletives. Was not a great showing for LSU on Sunday night in prime time, national TV audience. Not great. Not great at all. And yet, I wonder where they go from here. What is the path forward and how do they respond? And Brian Kelly had those same questions. We'll hear from Brian Kelly coming up here in just a little bit. But it just seemed like it was just flat out a second half mollywhopping from Florida State. And I'm not surprised by the result just because I had talked a couple of different times, somewhat at length, about how LSU was slow starting both in games and in the season. Or I guess Brian Kelly coached teams, maybe is the more appropriate term, are slow starters, both in seasons and in games. So I'm not surprised that that game played out the way that it did. I think Florida State has a lot to be really proud about. And I think LSU does to a point as well, because playing an opponent like that right off the bat for both sides is a really good thing. And it's a difficult thing to accomplish to play well. We saw a couple of Power 5 programs with really high aspirations this season not play great in week one. So to have an opponent like that on the schedule, both for LSU and Florida State, is one, I appreciate the willingness to do that. I appreciate the willingness to say, hey, let's play somebody tough right out of the gate and see what we got. Now, you might not like the answer today, and that's okay, but at least playing somebody of that caliber, I think, is important, and both sides deserve to be applauded for making that decision. Just flat out. I think both sides deserve to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, you know what, we did a really good thing for ourselves and for the sport in week one, and they should be commended for that. But LSU just never had a response. You just kept waiting for that counterpunch, and it never came. And there's this sense of like inevitability almost of, okay, at some point they're going to turn this thing on, and they just never did. And I don't know what that says about them or their program or Brian Kelly or whoever it says about them or whatever it says about them, because there was this expectation of, okay, here comes the response. And it just never happened. There just never was okay, we're going to pick ourselves up off the mat and get this done and make this competitive. It just kept tumbling and tumbling and tumbling Florida State's way. And I'm somewhat surprised by that. That's the thing that surprised me. Not the outcome, not the point differential, not the spread, not anything other than LSU just never really got back up and said, we're going to turn this thing into a fight. It just never happened. And so Brian Kelly had some interesting comments after the game. And I want you to listen to this. And I want to see if you pick up on the same thing that I pick up on when basically he's asked, what does this loss mean for your team going forward, especially going into conference play?
Uh, it, it it means everything as to what our mindset is. Like, how do we handle this? Is this who we want to be, or do we look at this and say this isn't the kind of football team we want to be? So, when you have these kinds of losses, they're disappointing, and in some instances they're devastating losses. But it's how you respond to them, and they have a chance to respond to this very disappointing performance in the second half. And so the choices they'll have to make will be ones that start tomorrow. How they handle themselves 24/7 is really what I'll be interested in seeing.
So that is courtesy of WGNO TV in New Orleans. And what's your takeaway from that? Because I'll tell you mine is that he said they a lot. He said, I don't know, or, I wonder how they will respond. It's up to them. They have to carry themselves in a different manner 24/7. A lot of theys there. And I don't necessarily know how I feel about it because on one hand, there's the idea that it's the players' team and Brian Kelly is just coaching it. That if you're going to succeed or you're going to do anything really well and be great, it's up to the players. That Brian Kelly can't be the one that motivates them and pushes them and drives them to work harder. That's an inherent thing that you have to hold yourself accountable to and your teammates accountable to. And I understand that thought process. But at the same time, he's saying all of that after he spent the first couple of minutes of his press conference talking about how, it's my job to have the team prepared, and I didn't do that. We weren't the team that I thought we were, blah, 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 blah. It comes across, at least in my opinion, that it can't be both. And I will admit that I'm biased. I don't necessarily love Brian Kelly for a couple of reasons, but it seems to me as if even an impartial observer would say, well, he's placing all of the blame on his players. And I don't think that's a great look. I don't think it's a great viewpoint to essentially just flat out be like, well, I had them prepared. I thought we were ready to go. I thought we were better than we were, but they didn't live up to the expectations. I just think that's a really crappy way to operate because you're either a team or you're not. Like if you're tasked with being the CEO of this team, and that's the sentiment you have after things go poorly, it's not a great look when you spend all of your time after a loss being like, well, they have to respond the right way. Well, you have to respond the right way too, because essentially what you're saying is I was perfect. I had my job done. They didn't execute their job, and that's why we didn't succeed. And I don't think that's a great look because ultimately the buck stops with you. And you can say all of the cliche right things to start your press conference, but when you get into, well, they've got to do their jobs, they, when you start using they, you are putting the blame on them and not taking the blame. Were his players perfect? No, absolutely not. But Florida State's weren't either. So the idea that your players are to blame, that you're not the problem, it's not a great look. And and maybe he's in a no-win situation there, I don't know. But I just think the idea of you have to take ownership of it. You have to say, we are going to get this thing turned around. And it doesn't even necessarily need turned around. You played a really good opponent in week 1 who played really well, who played better than you did. And there's no shame in that. There's no like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, that we just got our doors beat in. And it didn't necessarily always feel like your doors were getting beat in, but you didn't respond the way you thought your team would. That's okay. You've got some time to figure it out and get it rolling. But this idea that they're the problem, it wasn't me. I am not the issue. It's like, oh gosh, that really stinks to hear from a grown man to put it on. And there's truth to that. It's the head coach gets too much credit and too much blame constantly. But at the same time, you can't be like, well, it was my job to have them prepared, and we weren't as prepared as we should have been. And then on the flip side, be like, well, they got to respond. Well, if you didn't have your job done, it's not the onus isn't on them to be the ones to respond. It's definitely not a great look. And it's not all that hard to see that, like, hey, that's not a great look, bro. Like, that is not just uh a statement that's going to instill a whole lot of confidence into a team or a fan base or a coaching staff. And I don't know what the correct answer is there. When the question is based essentially like, hey, what does this mean for you going forward? Because I agree with the first sentiment off the top of his head. Is like how we respond to this is really important. You're 100% right that he called it could be a devastating loss. Well, if it's a devastating loss, that's a problem because that you can't let that ruin or torpedo your whole season. There's still a long way to go, and you still control your destiny to the college football playoff. So this idea that like, oh, it can be viewed as a devastating loss. Well, I don't know that it could, as much as you you don't let it become a devastating loss. Their schedule going forward: Grambling State at Mississippi State, Arkansas. Like it's not a murderer's row here the next couple of weeks. You can flip this script and be still really good throughout the season. Week 1 didn't go your way. If you As long as you didn't put all your eggs in that basket of, man, if we go out there and get a victory over the Seminoles, we've got a chance to win a national title, and then you get your butt kicked, and then, yes, you got to regroup. But I don't think that happened. I don't think they got just mollywopped so badly that there's no recovering and LSU ends up being 4-8. That's not going to happen. But the idea that the onus is on them to fix it because you didn't do anything wrong is like, God damn it, Brian, what are you doing? We talked a lot yesterday about Deion Sanders and Colorado getting their first win, and it's a big victory, and they deserve a ton of credit. And we didn't talk about somebody else who got their first win as not a Power 5, as an FBS head coach. And we're probably not going to spend, truthfully, a ton of time this season on the Texas State Bobcats. But G.J. Kinney got his first win on Saturday at Texas State over Baylor. And there's a little similarity there for G.J. Kinney and Deion Sanders, both legendary college football players. That's a joke. G.J. Kinney was the quarterback at Tulsa and had a really great college career. He's not on the level of Deion Sanders. Let's be serious. But he's kind of bounced around the coaching profession. Has been the offensive coordinator at Hawaii, was the head coach at Incarnate Word and FCS, and then moved up to Texas State this year. They go to Baylor, get a big win that I'm really high on Dave Aranda. I think he is spectacular, and that's a bad loss for Baylor, but it's a great win for Texas State. There was expectations that might be one of, if not the worst college football programs in FBS this year, and to go on a road and get a 2-score win over a Power 5 school is a big stinking deal. And G.J. Kinney had some fun with it, and I want to play this for you because I think it's really funny. But then also there's like, wait, what? In this clip.
Yeah, I read the game notes, and I told those guys before the game that I think he's 0-2 when the opponent scored 40-plus points. So that was kind of our magic number. If we get to 40, we felt like, statistically we win. So defense did a great job, and offense went out there, and I really wish we could have put it away on offense at the end, but it is what it is.
I appreciate the honesty of, like, I read the game notes and I saw that, if we score 40, we got a great chance of winning. The Dave Aranda teams are 0-2 when they've given up 40 points. So if we can put 40 on the board, I like our chances. I appreciate that honesty. I think it's actually kind of really funny and really refreshing to hear somebody be like, yeah, look at the game notes. I'm not stupid. You can pick some stuff up out of there. But then on the flip side, like, bro, you scored 42 against a defensive head coach who'd given up 40 twice in his head coaching career. The statement of, like, I wish we could have put it away at the end. You won by 2 scores. Like, what do you mean you wish you could have put it away at the end? You did put it away. You won 42-31 on the road against a Power 5 school. Like, you got a lot to be excited about. And it's like that, like, coach speak of that, like, there's always, everything could always be better. It just was like, GJ, man, you guys killed it. What are you talking about? That, like, I wish we could have put them away. You won by 2 scores. And I understand the idea of, like, well, hell, we beat Baylor by, 3 scores. Look out the rest of the conference. But, like, at the same time, it's okay to be really happy. We're like, yeah, we went on the road. We beat Baylor. We hung 42 on Dave Aranda, who's kind of like this defensive mastermind. And instead, it's like, we got stuff we could have done better. And I get that. But there's also the like, hey, I got my first FBS win, or a group of 5 school beating a Power 5 school on the road. They have pretty high expectations, and we went in there and we have pretty low expectations, and we went in there and beat them. It's the like flat out dichotomy of college coaching. It's like, yeah, we found this little nugget that if we score 40, we like our chances, but then also like, I wish we could have put them away. Put them away, bruh. You scored 42. I don't. I appreciate that. Honestly, at the first part, in the second half, you could just be like, dude, we scored 42 on a really good defense. We got a lot to be proud of, and that's okay to be proud. I think the final thing I want to talk about today, and that GJ Kinney sound, by the way, was brought to you by or courtesy of Texas State Athletics. So appreciate them putting that up on the YouTube. And frankly, I don't think it will be long until GJ Kinney is a Power 5 head coach. I don't think that, and that's kind of that's the thing that stinks for Group of 5 schools is when you hire somebody like GJ Kinney, that like if he succeeds, he's not going to be here very long, and you almost don't want GJ Kinney to be at your school for like 5 years, because if he is, it's because he wasn't so good that somebody came to snatch him up. But I mark my words, it will not be long until GJ Kinney is a Power 5 head coach. The style of football that he wants to play, somebody's going to find exciting. And I don't think it will be long until he's a Power 5 head coach in the state of Texas and doing good things. The final thing we're talking about today here on this Labor Day edition of the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory is Michigan's offense gave a protest salute. I don't know if that's the proper terminology, a protest salute for Jim Harbaugh, who's suspended for the first couple of games, and they wore free Harbaugh shirts into the stadium on Saturday. I don't think it's a great look. Players are going to stand up for their coach, and I think that shows the relationship that Jim Harbaugh has with his players. That if the players didn't say didn't have a response to their coach not being there for the first 3 games of the season, there might be bigger problems at play. But they're going to stand up for their head coach. It just was misguided, I think. You're protesting your own school. You're protesting your university president and athletic director at that point. They're the ones who gave him the suspension. It wasn't the NCAA, it's them. So you're essentially Michigan protesting Michigan, which is this weird kind of like circle theory that I don't know that I can get to the bottom of here by the end of this podcast. But just in general, your employer doesn't suspend you if you've done nothing wrong. And that's the thing to continually keep in mind. And I know that nobody believes that anybody that they does anything wrong these days. And yet, the governing body was going to suspend your head coach. Then his own employer suspended him because it certainly appears as if he might have done something wrong. It's not just the real true amount of witch hunts that happen are much fewer than the amount of witch hunts that people think happened. I don't think this is a witch hunt, especially when it's your employer, the school that you go to, are the ones that are suspending Jim Harbaugh. I don't think it's a great look. I think it showcases Jim Harbaugh's relationship with his players, that they feel that strongly that, by God, we're going to do a protest salute to start the ball game. But at the same time, you're kind of protesting your own school at that point. And I don't know if anybody ever thought of it that way. So that'll do it for today's edition of the Daily Huddle. Thank you for making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Certainly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. It really does go a long way in helping out the channel and helping out the video and getting in front of more college football fans. If you're watching or listening on a podcast, Give us a 5-star review. Help us out however you can. We certainly appreciate it. Again, this has been the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory. We'll catch you tomorrow for more college football talk every Sunday through Thursday right here on the Daily Huddle.